All right, so this is the beginning of my PowerPoint presentation on the remilitarization of Japan. As you can see, I'm using OBS to record this as I am unsure how to put voiceover over my PowerPoints. So this will be in a YouTube video when it is submitted as a link. All right, so let me get this in slide mode. There we go. Alright, so this is the remilitarization on Japan. What this means to Japan. So after World War II, Japan, in short, demilitarized itself. After it lost to the United States, it promised to never start any wars and only to be kind to other countries. Next slide. Okay, so these are the changes they're making to remilitarize. They are passing a law to allow them to defend their allies. Their government approved a new nuclear defense plan, or is trying to approve it. I could not get specifics on that. I was unable to find them. And they are working to amend they want to amend their constitution. Why are they remilitarizing? Recently, with lots of threats from North Korea, it's becoming more and more dangerous to not have their own military, their own protection. They have, they have a whole mainland to defend with hundreds of islands, and they also need to be able to help their allies when needing and securing their own anonymity. So in the early 20th century, Japan was heavily militarized. In 1904, Japan started a war with Russia. They did this with a surprise attack. It took 6 years of fighting for Japan to officially. When they tried to take the Russian. I don't understand what I put there. Okay, in 1932, Japan created its own puppet state in China. This was all during their very heavily militarized time. In 1937, Japanese troops took part in a 6-week massacre in China. This massacre was known as the Rape of Nanking, and in less than 2 months, Japanese soldiers had killed over 300,000 people and raped 80,000 women. On December 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, killing more than 2,400 Americans. This is when the United States officially entered World War II. The U.S. dropped 2 nuclear atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing and injuring over 200,000 people. The devastation shocked Japan and the whole world. This was the first time nuclear weapons had been used on a large population of people. After the death of 3 million of his subjects, Japan's leader, Emperor Hirohito, gave a speech that would lay the foundation for Japan's surrender to the Allied powers. This changed the course of Japan's history for decades to come. After their surrender, Japan needed a new constitution. Drafted in 1 week by a team of Americans led by General MacArthur, this constitution reflected many of the things mentioned in Emperor Hirohito's speech. That's supposed to say constitution, not speech. The very first sentence of Japan's new constitution's preamble emphasizes Japan's desire for peaceful cooperation with all nations and the promise that never again shall we be visited with the horrors of war through the action of government. The new constitution made many changes. This included downgrading the emperor's power and promoting human rights, and Article 9, which detailed how Japan would renounce all war forever. When the Korean War kicked off, all of the US troops that had been stationed in Japan since World War II were suddenly needed in South Korea. Since Japan would not be able to defend itself and also would not be able to help out with the Korean War, the United States urged Japan to create a far more robust police force. This police force would be more like a very small military. The small force of just 75,000 was called the National Police Reserve, which eventually became known as the Self-Defense Force (SDF). Established in 1954, it still persists to this day. Japan didn't need a big force as it had a huge ally in the United States, which vowed to protect it with conventional ground troops and its nuclear arsenal if ever needed or under attack. When it came time to help their allies, the United States, with their military effort to drive Saddam Hussein's forces out of Kuwait, they couldn't send any troops because of their constitution. They could only send $13 billion to help with their war effort, but their troops were forced to stay out of it. This was a huge embarrassment for Japan because of this they realized they couldn't earn international respect this way. More recently, North Korea issued a warning to Japan to stop putting pressure on Kim Jong-un to relinquish his nuclear program. They did this by saying it was a suicidal deed and that it will bring nuclear clouds to Japan. Obviously, Japan's I think, has been one of the only countries to actually have nukes dropped on it, if not the only country. So, of course, this threat means much more to them than it means to anyone else because they know the horrors of atomic bombs. After growing tensions between the U.S., Japan, and South Korea with North Korea. Now, the way I word this sounds weird, but I mean all of them together have tensions with North Korea, not with each other. So the U.S., Japan, and South Korea have tensions with North Korea. And the North Korean threat towards Japan, this has brought more fuel to Japan's push to remilitarize and be able to defend itself and allies. This is my sources cited page, and that's it. Thank you.